Bienvenidos y bienvenidas a todos y todas.
Welcome to everyone. We are very happy with everything that's happening within the festival. You just heard Caroline Ward, who's part, as she's a professional in this festival, and a part that she does that is so important is helping the students to work in their dreams and that they wish to achieve. So what we've done within this online festival is having the same professors that we've always had with us during the day. The whole morning we have 10 classes with the American String Quartet, with the Wind Quintet of Colombia, the Philharmonic of Bogota, the Philharmonic of Medellin. We also have someone for the Philharmonic of Montevideo and Santiago. So we have the entire day of classes. We have master classes with different professors from around the world. And Caroline is also working with the dreams of our students so that we all have the same possibility and access. And we all have our yoga. We also have our yoga professor that there are a few videos that we show during the day where we can move a little because this pandemic is, we're always in front of the TV, the screen. So Juan Pablo helps us move. This evening, I have 3 guests that I'm really happy because having the 3 of them in the same place and the same table is really unusual. And there are a lot of things the pandemic has taken away, but one thing that is added to our lives is the ability to bring together people where, regardless of their location. The cloud is a wonderful thing. So I would like to introduce Carmen Gloria Arenas. She is the director of the Teatro Municipal of Santiago. We are very proud of her as Chileans because she's the first director of the theater, the Municipal Theater of Santiago, and I think it's wonderful. Just that I'm a bit ashamed to say that in 2019 was the first time they ever chose a woman, but let's be happy that we did it and we have her here with us. We have Juan Carlos Adrianzen. He's a Peruvian adopted by Colombia. He's the director, head of programming at the Teatro Mayor Julio Mario Santo Domingo of. We have Jose Wolfa, who's Mexican. He's the general director of music culture, UNAM. Probably one of the biggest universities of Latin America. So thank you for being here. And we're here for a topic that's very beautiful. The journey is what we put, from emergent artist to artist, theaters and the opportunities for supporting your careers. Because one thing as an agency that I've observed, being an agent, so when we bring European or American artists, clearly America has a great market for them, but for our own artists, they're not as mixed. And it doesn't have to do with theaters, with the public, the audience, that I'd like to touch on these topics, but it could be with the same, like their formation. So I would like to start to trigger this conversation. What do you feel the artist needs to contain? Being a great musician is, being a good instrumentalist is great, but what else? What do you feel that it makes you bring an artist to your theater, to your places? Whoever can start.
Okay, let's get started. From Chile? That's a very broad question, because sometimes when you're in theaters where you have to look at the big pictures of what will happen throughout the year, at least before the pandemic, it's different now. But in more general terms, and from the point of view of what I've been through or managed, there is some balance about different things. I think the quality of an artist, their musical quality is very important, but it's also very important if we think about the new audiences. If we think about the individually of what makes it unique, makes them unique, not just they're better or worse or if they won some kind of award, but it has to do with the message, the attitude, and what they want to communicate in stage. I think that today artists have as a challenge to be great communicators, and I'm not saying that's only through music, but also in the way they work with music, right? We can see that with Alejandra Urrutia, which is someone we know, someone who's a director of this festival. Alejandra connects very well as a orchestra director and with the audience. Probably or in other times that wasn't that necessary, but today is very important to communicate in general terms. And so I think that choosing an artist comes from a practical things as in terms of budgets, and also what does that artist means, what's a message that they're bringing, what makes them unique, what makes them attractive, and to what audience. And so I think it's a balance between all of those things, and clearly, and in my opinion, to have the best violinist of the era, or it's questionable. It all depends, and it depends of so many things, of the audience, of the artist, their heart, their personal history. I think there is a uniqueness, and their communication abilities, it's also important.
Gracias, Carmen Gloria.
Thank you, Carmen Gloria. I would like to propose that you guys just join the conversation. Let's take care of the translators, of course, that have to finish.
No, no una máquina, es un
No,
maravilloso.
the translators are not a machines. It's a wonderful human being. So, Juan Carlos José.
Decías en tu introducción que los chilenos estaban muy orgullosos de que Carmen Gloria estuviera
You said that Chileans are very proud.
Pero no es una exclusividad de ustedes, es un orgullo, creo, latinoamericano tener una profesional como Carmen Gloria, a quien creo que tenemos la suerte muchos de conocerla hace muchos años trabajando en esto, y creo que nos llenó de alegría, de orgullo, tenerla ahí como aliada, como ha estado en tantos lugares también, ¿no? Hablando desde Bogotá, desde el Teatro Mayor Julio Mario Santo Domingo, y pensando un poco en el tema que nos habías planteado para este conversatorio, claro, uno piensa mucho en lo que dice Carmen Gloria, ¿no? Esa como empezaba, ¿no? ¿Cuál es ese diferencial a veces del artista, ¿no? Que sea muy talentoso, que haya ganado el premio, que esté pensando en los emergentes, que esté iniciando una carrera interesante, ¿no? Pero creo que también es muy interesante, y esto sucede muy rápido, la calidad humana del artista, ¿no? No solamente, que es muy importante lo que mencionaba Carmen Gloria hacia afuera y como comunicador y su relación con el público, sino también la manera que tiene de relacionarse con las instituciones que lo van a contratar, ¿no? Que lo van a llevar, pensando en que estamos también en un espacio académico en el que seguro quienes nos están escuchando, que nos van a poder ver luego, son profesionales o son aspirantes a ser artistas internacionales. Ese es un tema que también es muy importante. Gente talentosa.
Human quality is very important. Talented people are there. People that move around the world they're more and more like this. But I think this is also a variable that we consider. Who are we going to bring home? This person, how do they behave in relation to the public, but also how do they behave with other artists that they live with the institution that they relate to, with the city that they arrive to. So I think that's also a variable that we shouldn't lose when we're starting a career. It's important to be talented, to be rigorous. In a space that's so competitive, where you have to choose between 4 and 5, there are a lot of talented people from all around the place that we can choose from, no? It's interesting, no? the importance of the need of other abilities like being a good communicator, like Carmen Gloria says, and also like relational abilities to see who I relate with. That's strong. That's important. Jose, what is your opinion, your feeling?
Thank you, Angelica. And thank you for the invitation and to be talking with you today. I agree with what Carmen Gloria and Juan Carlos said. I think that all of us that work in programming spaces and creating permanent spaces as theaters that like my two colleagues just mentioned, like festivals and the Portillo Festival as well, we have that radar on. We have been cultivating the radar with time as well to detect and to see that spark, that human factor that Juan Carlos just mentioned. And I think it's very important. And as I was listening, I started thinking in music, in the music direction, we have two scholars, youth orchestra from the University of Eduardo Mata to pay a tribute to our orchestra director, and another one that's focused on repertoires from the past centuries. And so when you see them performing, you realize where that spark is. And even with very young people, most of them are in their 20s, 25 years old. Some of them can be distinguished with that human warmth, that capacity of projecting something or giving out something that looks different. And I agree with my colleagues just said, and I wanted to say something so that we can open a debate, maybe what you were saying about dreams of young people, what Angelica was saying, and I've had the opportunity to see that in my links with the formation spaces, music spaces, that dream that we're feeding that can be very big for some of these young people. As Juan Carlos was saying, it's a very competitive space, and many of them are studying and working with the idea of one day being a soloist that has an international career and that's invited to theaters outside of the country. And which is true as well, is that most of them will never reach that point. And I'm saying it because sometimes it's important to put us allow them to understand what it is, like this idea of being a star. It seems something very 19th century, and I think about that when we're talking about chamber groups, when we leave those lights that are focused on just one artist, and there are groups that can be very eloquent and respectable musically but are not celebrities. So I'm putting this on the table so that we can discuss it a little, because it is important if we feed those dreams that may lead to difficult personal situations as well for these young people that are studying.
Está interesante ese punto que pone José, porque
Interesting that point, Jose. We think that everyone can achieve their dream, but we have to have clarity in the dreams that one has. And clarity doesn't have to do with limits. The proposal is that one can be unlimited, but what does it mean to be a celebrity nowadays? Because I feel that that's changing. This brings me to the next point, which is the deep appreciation. With the three of you, we've been working with Curtis. Juan Carlos is gonna, Jose and Carmen Gloria have brought it this year online, and I observe how they speak of the dual quartet, which is a great quartet, but probably we have quartets that are great and amazing in our countries. but the North America speak with a appreciation of their people that we say, wow, if God exists, like God comes down to earth to play this concert. Do you feel that we lack that feeling of appreciation of our Latin America talent? That's a very difficult question. I think, yeah, what you're saying about Curtis and Dover Quartet is definitely somehow in Europe and different schools in the US. There are brands that are very strong and they're known. And it's like the quartet that they have is obviously that's going to be really good. There's a prestige that's installed, especially in classical music. And maybe if we talked about other expressions, Chile is a country great of expression. Mexico and Peru, but in terms of classical music, the heart is Europe, and that's the truth. And sometimes it's the cradle. So there's like in Peru, it's in Chile, people look down on classical music. It has to come from outside to be appreciated. The center is Europe, and in the unconscious of our mind, that's there, that we know that that's the heart of it. So there's more of an appreciation towards what's out there than a valorization of what we produce. They're important schools in Chile, they're universities, and I'm not refuting that, but the level of education and the professors and the audience and the people that you meet in Juilliard, Curtis, LA, or Europe is different. That's just the reality. But there is a lack of valorization, of giving opportunities, of creating opportunities. There's a lack of commitment from organization, of festivals, and the public as well, that wants to see people who are just starting out, that have a career ahead of them, that are just starting. That's what I feel.
I would like to add something to what Jose just said, and I thought it was very interesting, related to the expectations that these artists have, these young people have, because you're using a language that might not be as comfortable for everyone. Thinking about the big market of classical music and for scenic arts and music in general, everything is so competitive that we need to be very clear with who you are and not giving up your dreams, as you were saying, but be very clear about where you are, what are your possibilities, where will I stand, what makes me different, what Carmen Gloria was saying at the beginning of the conversation. And that's something all artists need to do and groups need to do with the help of their mentors, with their institutions. It is a topic that we need to talk and understand that sometimes not the best thing is to be that big star. Maybe that's not the final goal. And adding to what Carmen Gloria was saying, related to what's national, and when you're so focused in Europe, I think that has changed too with the years. And in the past 10 years, I've seen a change that it's noticeable in Latin America and countries as Mexico, Peru, and Colombia. And we are looking at what's going on in our countries. And it is something that needs to start with the institutions. It will not start probably with an audience that will be more conservative, specifically in this academy music. And I think there is a responsibility, commitment from the institutions, from the theaters, from the festivals, from the formation spaces in which we need to create that space. And it comes from giving their space for presentations and also combining artists from one side and the other, being creative, and a lot that has to do with our cultural offer, and also rescue our artists from our countries that sometimes are in other places and bring them home so that we can show that what's ours, it's very interesting and powerful as well. And I think it's hard for us to understand that the speed that the tickets are sold sometimes with any kind of artist that comes from other countries, and the effort that we need to put that into a national artist. And I think that's a very hard work that we need to do as programmers, director artists, or organizers.
Y creo que no solo ustedes, ¿no? Pero
And I think it's not just your job, like the way you said, artists also have to be a part of their work, what to offer, what to program, what to talk about, how to seduce the public somehow. Jose.
a esta conversa. Y te quería decir algo, ¿ah?
I wanted to say something. When we talked about when we worked the topic of dreams, there was a young Colombian that wanted to work with her people. She came from a rural area and she was very talented. She could work anywhere, but she wanted to work there. And that's success because success is very referred to having a lot of money, having a lot of prestige, and being well known. Now more than ever, we think we have to rethink that way of what success is for me, for each one of us. But Jose, you are someone that has been very innovative with the composers, the upcoming composers, and contemporary music. That's fundamental, Angelica, for me, to sponsor authors, local authors, that we're not always focused on the repertoire, the egocentric repertoire from the US. We have the US right next to us, which is a gift and a curse at the same time. And the referent has always been Europe. The way Carmen Gloria said, in our subconscious, we still have that reference, that continuous reference towards the European. And I heard that there's a saying that no one's a prophet in their own land, and this is very clear in the artist world. It's when a Mexican artist leaves his country and he achieves success on the international stage that we take the time to say, oh, look, this person is doing something very interesting, positive, but an orchestra from Los Angeles had to come. I'm thinking in cases like the famous Danzón number 2 in Arturo Marquez, when he achieved success with the Philharmonic of Los Angeles, he received another perception from us. And I'm mentioning LA again because it's our neighbor. It's a city that, as we say, it's the second city with most Mexicans in the world. It's an interesting case. This comes from what we were talking about in the beginning, the role that women play in this analysis, and realizing that we've inherited a lot of patterns and conducts that are very restricted towards women. I'm thinking about Gabriela Ortiz, who is a composer who also has achieved support by Los Angeles. I mentioned these two examples as though that mechanism still very present, whereas it's not only until you leave and you present yourself in other stages and you're well received, then you receive.
I wanted to add something that what Jose was saying and what you were talking about, Angelica, the concept of success. I think that evolves as well. The concept evolves with the years. And when you're too young, you have big teeth. You like what you do, you feel passion, and you want to eat the world. But there's so much exposure today with social media, but probably with years that will evolve. And I think exceptional the case of this Colombian girl that you were mentioning, that she would say that what she wanted was to stay. I think that musician has a mission. She has a very clear mission. She has a calling. That probably is not a concept of success. There is a more deep mission. And I think that's very interesting, and that evolves as well. And with what Jose was saying, I think he's totally right, and something positive for Latin America and dance, because now we're talking about music, but in terms of dance, there is a production of dancers in Latin America in contemporary dance and ballet, and it's very interesting, and it has a lot of creators, and it resonates a lot in other parts of the world. And for some reason, Latin America has been able to export more dancers that can reach the best companies. Daniel Lopez Ochoa, a great choreographer, I think she's Colombian or Mexican, I don't know. I'm not quite sure, but there are a lot of creators that are very valuable, and that's a good thing about dance. It's out in the world, and probably classical music, it's a lot more competitive, probably.
I wouldn't be as optimistic as for dance in Mexico. I would like to, it's very interesting what you're saying, Carmen Golia, and I have to research this, but in terms of Mexican dance, we've had a lot of difficulties with the colleagues who dedicate more. They always see themselves as the ugly ducklings, as the underdog. I'd like to comment that as you say this, Angelica, about the expectations of this girl that had as a dream to work with her people, an example that I always remember and I comment is very moving, at the same time very true, very clear. Some years ago, I had the opportunity to visit a school that is in the Sierra Mije de Oaxaca. Sierra Mije is an indigenous zone. Oaxaca is a southern state that has the most variety of so this city was a school formed to sponsor the local bands in the town. They had a school that had other aspiration that looked to expand their range and the type of music and material that they had available. And some years ago, they agreed that one student, a young student, were awarded a scholarship for a certain amount for him to go to Belgium to do some orchestra studies. So they put this money together, the whole school, the town. So his intention wasn't to stay in Europe, and he had this consciousness to educate himself to come back to his town and assume a leadership position in his community. So I find it an incredible example of this career that maybe we don't imagine for us, even when we're young, that we're gonna play in the Philharmonic concert of Berlin or Carnegie Hall. That there's someone, a censor, who had a mission so clear to leave, to educate himself, to come back home and offer that to his community.
Yo tengo la sensación, qué lindo lo que cuentas.
That's really beautiful what you're saying. I hear many times, at least here in Chile, why the municipal theater is the theater that we talk bad about more often. Why don't they hire more Chileans? But it has to do with the international world. So the pandemic, I feel like the world has gotten even smaller. We can travel one country to another with these connections. However, I would love, for example, how to make it happen, how to achieve that our public go and see what we're doing, what's nearby. And that's a very difficult challenge. How does the municipal theater, I mean, because you have to sell tickets and fill the theater because you have to sustain it, or I don't know how it is in Colombia. And I imagine that in a theater that belongs to a university can be a little different. Maybe you can offer yourself a few luxuries. Is that how it is?
Les puedo contar un poco
I can tell you a little bit about the experience from Colombia. Sometimes it's just more of a perception that big stages as Teatro Mayor, in which you think international is on the programs and you realize how much more national things are compared with in terms of the international. People talk bad just because they're used to doing it. It's part of our nature as human beings. And I think achieving that balance, that international balance that will help us to put our institutions at a local and international level, and that will help us as well to sell tickets for our audiences, and to combine that with a program with national players where we have plays and to put and support our composers and the artists from our region in a stage in which they can all be not just national artists or international artists. And that will be, in the end, a platform for those national artists to go to other stages. It's kind of like a competition with agencies because we benefit from that. It's a platform, and we are part of a big grill that has a lot of things like international artists. How do we convince the audience to enjoy some of their own things? And I think I don't have the formula, and if you have it, please send it to me. I think it's a very long journey, but I think it can be summed up in the quality of what we present. It's not just give that space to that emerging artist just because, but it has to do that what we are presenting needs to have a lot of quality. Otherwise, the audience will go just one to support the national theater because they want to enjoy the show and see a good concert or a good ballet or an artist. And so I think betting on the national artist has to do with the quality and not just a wing for the nationals, but to think that what we're presenting has a high quality and it's competitive.
Relacionar un poquito, Juan Carlos, por lo
I'm
latino.
gonna open up the national to the Latin American because I think Latin America could be a market for Latin America. What you're saying makes a lot of sense. Like the same theater, by mixing international with national within Latin America, is a great opportunity to showcase yourself as well.
I'm in line with Juan Carlos. I think it's not enough with saying the national artist is great and you have to come see him, because it can be great and
It's
and
not
it
enough
might
for it
not
to
be
be
enough sometimes.
international.
And that happens too with someone who is international, and those are projects that are not as you may
The
think that it would
sales,
be,
the
even with the
communication, it's not
ticket
what you
sold and the
expected. So the fact that
communication
it's
and everything.
national
What's
has a
national
value, but what
has
Juan
value,
Carlos says,
but
you can't expect them
it
to
may
come
happen that a
one
person
time
would
to
come
see
and
a
see that
national,
person once or
but
twice.
is that
But
the
if
cost for
that's
them
the
to
reason,
come
that's endogamic, I think that's
always
kind of
is very dangerous
because
because it tramples the level of
messes
artists.
up the level of the artist. To see artists
To
that
see
come from
other
other
artists that
parts of
come
the
from
world that
different
are a lot
places.
better than us that are on the stage. That
So this is good.
that's a healthy thing,
Bringing
I
people
think,
from outside.
and helps you up. And that's why, because municipal theater, and I'm
So Julio
imagining the
Mares, the
university
university. I would
and
love to
the
know about the
theater of Santo
university.
Domingo, and I would like
If
to
they
know
have a little
about the
bit of
question you made to Jose. I think that
liberty,
they have more liberties
luxury,
and
so
they're
they're
not
not
so
so
tied with those
attached to
ticket
sales and
solds that
tickets.
they
I
need to
think it's
have.
all a
I
mix,
think
and
we
we have to
need to have
have
a space
space
for
for the
nationals.
national.
And as I said
But
in the
as I said from
beginning,
the beginning, is also
The
to
idea is
communicate.
to
What
communicate.
are we
And what are we
proposing in terms of
What are
going
we
to see?
communicating?
What are we talking to?
Who
What are
do we want to
communicating
draw?
to
Why
people,
do
to
we have
groups,
that
to
person in the
people?
stage? Why do we
Why do
want
we want them
people
to
to
be
be enthusiastic to come and see
enthused to
that
see this
person or that
people,
show?
this group?
That makes
This
it's
whole
highly
mix
important
nowadays is very
today. And I
important.
think I share
And I
what Juan
share with
Carlos
Juan
was
Carlos
saying.
the
If it's
idea,
national,
whether it's
whatever the
national,
nationality
Mexican,
is,
Colombian,
Mexican,
Latin
Latin
American,
American, it's
to
important
one
at some
point,
point. But to
it's useful, but
link
to attach
decisions to
decisions
that,
based
I
on
don't think
that
it's
is
that
not that
helpful, honestly.
wise. I share the sentiment with you. Jose?
De acuerdo hasta cierto punto con lo que
I agree to a certain degree, and I'll explain why.
No creo que se trate de cumplir cuotas.
I don't think it's about complying with a quotation, right? We had 50% of Mexican programming in the university just to comply with that. I think about that from the experience that I've had for several years, mostly promoting new music. I was in charge of a festival for a long time and experimental music, new music, and that was me being in charge of new projects from musical, classic, and contemporary music. And every time I say that, it's kind of funny because it's a contradiction of terms, but I'm sure you understand contemporary music written for those classical formats, people who have a trajectory of a conservatory, etc. From that, and also experimental artists as well. And that's also a word that I use in quotations because it's hard to say, but it can be misleading. But if you want to use a space, a platform such as such as a festival that's showing new music, you will always have a risk factor there. And so you can think that this or that composer or interpreter with this new project that's creating electronic music with violin, for example, then it may have the credentials and background, and I agree with what you're saying, to have a good show, a good performance. But as you are supporting them, you may make mistakes sometimes, and that's inevitable. So if you are betting on supporting new things, some bets will be better than others, without a doubt. I'm sure I'm not saying anything that you do not know, but I think that's a natural part of what we have to do. In the case of the university, it's kind of easier for us in that sense because we don't live from the tickets sold. We have a budget given to us by public instances.
Ciertos recursos para complementar.
We try to draw some other resources to complement and to try to do other things, yes, but that gives us a possibility, for example, and I think it's also an obligation for us to give space to the students from the university, the composers of the music faculty, which is it's like a sister to us. It's a sisterhood that we have there with that faculty, with the artists are emerging there, and that's part of our responsibility. And to wrap it up and to go back with Angelica, I think that the periods of more musical effervescence, like New York in the 50s and Vienna from Beethoven, to say it in somehow, there were proposals and mistakes that would come up out and be greater than others, but that's a reflection of that live scene that's producing sometimes great projects and some other times those that do not comply with what you were expecting.
Jose is very right, and then we close full circle here when we talk about what you said in the beginning about success. So we have to define what's the concept of a theater, of a program, of a season for it to be successful. So obviously the way we measure is to have the rooms full, and also another way to figure out if it's successful is to see what are we offering. So we have a theater that's 63 years old, So we have an organization that's very heavy in history. You have to work a lot to make it more flexible so that more spaces are being opened without, let some experiences that we might fail, but all those experiences add. So there's some classical foundations that we have to do a lot more work, create more experiences. Juan Carlos, yours is younger, right? So maybe yours is more flexible, but organization like mine today have that challenge. Is a great challenge. People are always waiting for the big show, the great production and success. Everything has to be good. The critique has to be good. The room needs to be full. So it's interesting what Jose says, and I think universities, there is a more experimental search that's associated to university the theater that I'm in right now.
Instituciones que son
We're in three institutions that are very different. And in that sense, and as I was listening to Jose and many Mexican experiences, you say, okay, I want. But then I say, okay, Jose might have another problem that we might face in the kind of structure that we are in our institutions. And yeah, what you're saying about contemporary bets and creations in general. The past 3 years ago, we have been betting to multidisciplinary things. We've had space for contemporary, and yesterday we were talking with that we were talking with an artist that we had a premiere last year, and we were assessing on how we did it, and we were dreaming about that for a year and a half, and we were talking about how great it was and maybe the things that we might improve. And we're thinking about this, that this is a career of artists that we need to and we want to continue to support. It's a long journey, building the audiences and sharing, and also have more supporters and the artists themselves and us from the institutions. And I think it's very important, as we were saying, that we need artists to have missions and clear goals. It's also important that our institutions have them as well, so that we are able to answer to these demands that we have sometimes from different sites. And I think our scenarios and our stages from the three of us, we are much more than an exhibit space. There's a lot things building up in the university, in Teatro Mayor, and the Municipal Theater of Santiago. We need to think of the programs and think about the audiences and also the artists. And we owe that to them as an institution.
Thank you all three of you for this. I want to share a dream that I have. That's why I was very interested in this panel. I would like you, Carmen, Gloria, to share a little bit because we have 3 or 4 minutes left.
Algo que yo, porque probablemente tú, Juan Carlos, sabes, pero José.
Probably you know, Juan Carlos. Jose, we started with a social unrest last year in October, and Carmen Gloria, you took charge on the 16th of October. So the theater was very near to where this social unrest was. And then the pandemic started. So to inherit a theater in the conditions that you inherited, I think you're doing a job beyond unbelievable. And you just launched a project, which is the 12th composition. So just talk to us a little bit about how that was. Yeah, the Compuesta number 12 is for digital platforms based on that talks about the miners in Chile. It's an opera made in digital format. So it was recorded that way with a lot of resources, a lot of editing resources. And this opera, micro opera, last 40 minutes is Miguel Farias. He was in the art direction. it's clearly, it's not an experiment, but it's a creation that looks to innovate. It's the first experience from our team made as an opera made during pandemic, and it's digital. The interesting thing is that this project is part of a bigger project that's also educational. It's called this Center for Experimentation and Innovation for Arts, where a lot of organizations are coming together. And what we're looking to find is bring education, our own processes for artistic media. So what we're doing here, beyond the artistic result, is manifesting how arts can be a concrete contribution to education and formation of the next generations. It's not necessarily creating an opera, but it is teamwork and working with the dynamics of an orca of students in the secondary school. Opera is available on our website if you want to take a look. It's been very gratifying, this experience for the whole world. It's been innovative, and so we are full steam ahead to give visibility to creators, young artists in Chile. Thanks for the question, Angelica. Thank you, because I'm very interested in it. They launched it in the days that we were in the festival. I haven't seen it, but I think those innovative spaces that pandemic has offered us has been very fascinating. Well, I want to tell you my dream because we have to end, but I would love that this festival is like festivals from other worlds in the Northern Hemisphere, and where you guys next year can be here. You can see, you can come and look at the youngsters and the quartets and speaking with them. I feel that musicians and the instrumentalists and the artists have to learn the art that you said, Juan Carlos, of going and speaking with you and create relation, networking, and closeness, so that in the way that you say, oh wow, let me look at this guy. Maybe I invite the orchestra, a violinist, invite a violinist in orchestra because he seems so good, or program them. But I feel that I completely agree with all of you. It's not just national, it's just not Latin American, but how to open to a world that's more fair for everyone, that's more accessible for everyone. Nothing more than that. Not changing the international for just ours. That's boring. I want something bigger than that. So I thank you so much. I feel like the conversation was short. I would love to continue and speak some more, but I thank you for being here with us this evening. I invite you to plan yourselves for next year to be here with us in person. I want to show you the place. Maybe this will attract you. This is where we are in this moment. Juan Carlos, I've seduced you.
Porque estoy un poco más lejos, pero
Jose
gracias.
is more difficult.
Yeah, it is harder, but I hope that we can do it. Go back to the normal life, hopefully for next year.
Yeah, it would be really great to have you guys in person. It's been a pleasure to be here virtually with you and working with you during the year. And I thank you. You can't imagine that you've been here for our festival.
Gracias.
Thank you so much, Angelica. See
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Juan Carlos and Jose.